This week, we're going to start with a discussion around effective communication. Our guest, Abi Banky, who is the founder of Africanist magazine and also one of my coachees. How does it show up in your daily routine, your relationships, and is your way of communication impacting your everyday experience, either from a professional standpoint or personal? Sometimes it can be both. Being human is not always the first thing people think about, but communication can actually be a cultural exchange, and we may sometimes misunderstand it. If we're talking from a gender perspective, men are from Venus and women are certainly from Mars. Or is it the other way around? I think you get what I mean, right? Communication can be misinterpreted. I'm also going to look at the research that exists around different types of communication from a 360 angle, and also looking at the perspective from the language in the workplace and also in love language, for example. I would like to also look at the solutions and also the challenges in communications. So let's get into it. But before we do, just to remind you, every Thursday, 8 till 10 p.m. GMT, I'm also live on itch.fm. So when you hear me speak about musicians, it's also in conjunction with what this show is about today. So, welcome to The Core, and you're tuned in to The Millennial Coach. Welcome to our show today, and we're going to be talking about communication. Abi is in the studio. What's up, Abi?
Hey guys, hello.
Thank you for joining us. Abi will be one of our regular co-hosts, and we'll be making sure that she is going to bring her perspective on the subjects that are of interest to her. So today I want to just recap on last episode, mental health and mindfulness. It was an interesting topic. And I think this week I've had one experience in one of my sessions with someone who is currently experiencing mental health and has been contact with the business that he works into counselling. So that's actually a good win for him. So anyone that has been experiencing anything, please, as I said, contact IAPT, or go to your doctor, or find yourself, call the Samaritans, or find yourself your own personal therapist. So as we celebrate Black History Month this month, we are going to give a shout out to Diane Abbott, and she is an MP for Hackney. And I think if we think about, especially in this country, we think about the things that have been, or the challenges that have Black people have experienced in the UK, I think being an MP is definitely one of them. I think that's a massive challenge and a massive achievement. So I just want to read something about Diane Abbott, and just for everyone to just sit and think about what she's had to go through to become as accomplished as she is. Growing up, Diane was something of an outsider, the only Black child or student at the Harrow County Grammar School for Girls. Diane was fiercely independent. Unhappy with her progress at school, Diane studied at her own rate and won top marks, but her boldness did not gain her teachers' support even when she was accepted at Cambridge University. Despite her teachers, her parents were always supportive. They knew that she would have to be twice as good as the other students to succeed. Diane studied history at Newham College, Cambridge. I've probably pronounced that incorrectly, so forgive me. Class divisions set her apart from the other students, and she was often lonely. Diane thinks of this time as character building, and she did not let it stop her from helping people. After graduating, she worked as a civil servant, served on the National Council for Civil Liberties, and was a reporter for Thames Television, always looking for a way to make real change in the world. Diane turned to politics. A long-term member of the Labour Party, Diane first ran for office in 1982. When she served on Westminster City Council in 1987, she had made history when she became the first Black woman elected to Parliament, representing Hackney North and Stoke Newington. As an MP, Diane was has been passionate about fighting for human rights and civil liberties. Always dedicated to her party, she has taken on many roles, including Shadow Secretary of State for Public Health and Shadow Home Secretary. She continues to serve and was re-elected in 2017. Race and class discrimination were hurdles Diane had to face along the way, but with her determination and her passion for public service, she has made her mark. So we want to say thank you very much to Diana Abbott. And I hope that there's many other people listening that have the ambitions to actually work in politics and make a difference. Those of you, as I said last time, who are opposed to Boris, I personally will stand back on my opinion. And I said before that I will like to give him room to make changes. Give him some time. And see what he can do. Obviously, if it's not in your favour, you know what you need to do at the next election. So, in terms of communication, what are your initial thoughts on communication, Abby? How do you think communication works in the business, in the home, and with friends?
Well, I would say communication is a two-way street, and it takes respect and clarity. Yeah. Okay. So when you say respect, why use that term? I guess in order to communicate effectively, you have to show the other person that you do respect their opinion, them as a person. And I just feel like it's important to be respectful when communicating, regardless of how you feel towards that individual or the situation.
Okay, so looking at communication, there are different ways we communicate.
Definitely.
And verbal and physical are two ways. So, for example, when we communicate verbally, I think it's a case of understanding the tone of the person. Mm-hmm. Because I could say to you, can you be quiet? Or could you please be quiet?
Yes.
Which one seems more receptive?
I would say, first of all, you really do have to know that person.
But if you didn't know me,
yeah,
which one would you be more receptive to?
Could you please be quiet?
Okay, why is that?
There's a please. And the tone.
Okay, so tone of voice when communicating, I would say, is quite an important aspect, because I think, when you're out, it's like I asked somebody, could they get off my skirt? In London, I was in a shop, and he said, "You don't have to ask." And I thought, okay, I don't know if this is he has an issue,
right?
Or he's got his issue with privilege,
right?
Or he just doesn't like to be told. But I couldn't move, so when he stood on my skirt, I had to stand. I couldn't move.
But I think it's a cultural thing as well. The British culture, even when you're being disrespectful, you still have to put your please and thank you. So
that's interesting.
Yeah,
that's interesting. So if you were to say if you were to judge yourself, how would you judge yourself as a communicator?
Well,
if you gave yourself a score out of 10.
Out of 10. It depends on the situation. So if it's more of a professional setting, I would give myself 5. Personal setting, probably a 9.
A 9?
Yes.
Why is there such a disparity in the scoring? Because a 5 for business is very low.
I would say because I'm still quite young in my career and my business, and I'm still learning. So I am at that stage of evolving, as well as my personal life. I'm still learning about other people and the right way to communicate with different sets of people. So I wouldn't be too confident and rate myself a 10.
You know what? I think that's quite noble for you and very modest. And I think it's really important that when we do work with people, we are very aware of who we are when we're in work.
Yeah.
Because I think there is a form of arrogance when people communicate, when they feel that it's a form of assertion. Mm-hmm. And that's where a lot of people get communication wrong.
Yes, definitely.
And one of the biggest challenges, I would definitely say, is emotional intelligence when communicating, and emotional awareness. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So emotional awareness is where you communicate, but there are a range of different or 5 particular skills I would definitely encourage people to be aware of. First skill, consider other people's feelings. Would you say that you've experienced where somebody has, you're going through something and people have been insensitive to how you feel? And if you have, what experience was that?
Okay, so this actually happened 2 months ago. I lost my grandma, and I was expressing to a friend that I was disappointed in myself for not calling her quite often while she was alive. And this friend was dismissive. She said, well, I lost my grandma to like a few years ago. You would just have to get over it.
Wow.
At that given moment, I felt that, you know what, I think our friendship should stop right now. It made me feel just not listened to, not cared for.
Interesting. So, and condolences to you and your family on the loss of your grandma.
Thank you.
But I think if we think about when people respond, you've got to ask yourself, is this because they care, or is it because they're very into themselves?
I think it's okay, that situation, probably she was into herself, but secondly, I would say I allowed her to speak to me in that manner because I've always allowed myself to take the second best in certain situation with her. So it's a situation where, Abby, it can't be about you for too long. Let's make it about me again, and you just make me look good.
Wow, okay.
So it's understanding that, and also asking myself, is there something I'm willing to, is this a situation I would like to prolong? Is this a friendship I would like to stay in?
Okay, so I'm going to go back a little bit.
Right.
Because you said to me that you're still growing and you're still young. So do you think that you could look at that situation slightly different and actually express how you felt to that person to let them know that their behavior was inappropriate at that time as a form of maturity?
Definitely. But then you do have to know yourself. It takes me a while before I actually have a full understanding of the situation I do find myself in. So I did communicate with her a few weeks after. And I did express that I felt dismissed, and again, I made excuse for that person. Nonetheless, I just wanted to express myself.
So how was that received?
I didn't care much about how it was received. It was more of getting that off my chest.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
It wasn't received too well.
Okay. Well, I think that's where we need to be aware that when we are expressing ourselves, we also need to have that emotional awareness of that person's feelings. Because one of the things I find when I coach is I speak truth when it comes to working with different types of people.
Right.
And a lot of people, some people find it a little bit intense. And I think once they start, and the thing is, I think age has a lot to do with communication. I think there's
a certain degree, yes.
Well, I would say age with people that are mature and know who they are. Okay.
Yes.
Because I think, I've always said as well that some people grow, but they stay the same as their shoe size. So I don't believe everyone matures, but I know everyone grows. So there's a difference, like
Definitely.
grows in physicality. You might go bald, doesn't mean that you're mature.
You're mature. Yeah.
So at times when I do my work, one of the things I do is speak the truth.
Right.
And integrity is, to me, a very strong form of communication. Because if somebody comes to you, they know that when they speak to you, they're going to get the truth. Truth is the only way that the only way you can live.
Yes.
And a lot of people, unfortunately, don't tell the truth.
Right. So I have a question.
Yes.
Now, when telling the truth, do you consider being kind, how do you deliver that, even if the truth might come across as something quite painful to hear?
Okay, so in situations where I've had to tell the truth, what I tend to do, I tell the person that I need to have a conversation with them.
Right.
And 9 times out of 10, because I always have so much fun with them, they're completely oblivious to the seriousness of the conversation. So people usually, okay, I'll meet you and we'll have coffee or whatever. So then I'll be like, okay, this is not an easy conversation I'm going to have.
Right.
And the first thing I say to them is, I want you to be aware that what I'm going to say, it may sound emotional, but it's because I'm really hurt.
Okay.
And so I'm about to start, and then I go into what I'm going to discuss.
Right.
And the reason I do that, because I think that you need to honor the other person as well as yourself. And I think if you can't express yourself calmly without, I said last week, punching someone in the throat. But if you can't express yourself without being physical or throwing something, then I think that you need to evaluate how you internalize issues, because how you internalize it is how you express it as well. And the thing is, a lot of people, and the thing is, I always say to people, a lot of people that have really, the ones that are in the office, they're super happy. Hi, how are you? Da, 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 da. A lot of the time, I actually don't buy that.
Passive aggression.
Well, no, because passive aggressive is slightly different. Passive aggressive is when someone is actually making comments, but they're not being very nice. And they're not actually speaking the truth. The people that want to be happy, what I mean is that they don't actually express themselves. They actually put themselves second, but they want people to be happy as well as them. But the thing is, when you sit on emotions, what happens is you implode or explode.
Yes.
Okay. And like I said last week, one of the things people really need to take into consideration, we don't have a gun culture in the UK. But a lot of the US, when there is shootings, you find out that, as I said last week, that a person is an employee or someone who's upset in school. They are disgruntled by things that they've experienced, and then they implode, and that's why they go, so this is why it's important to communicate. And that's why when I talk about communication, I actually role play with a lot of my coachees. I actually pretend to be the person they're going to have the conversation with. There was a boy in a film company in Shoreditch, and he said to me, I'm really struggling because they really expect me to do all this stuff and I don't actually know it. So I pretended to be the manager. I was a little bit aggressive because the lady is lovely, but she's busy, and I know she speaks straight. Again, she's a straight shooter like I am. So I know her intent is not negative. So I think if you are going to, when we had this conversation, I think he realized that he has the right to express himself. Right. And that's another thing that I think when it comes to communicating issues, you need to understand that you also have the right to speak.
Two-way.
Yeah, it's a two-way process. It's not, I'm just going to talk and you're going to listen. And that's where people make the mistake. And I think with communication, especially when it comes to emotional awareness, is that you have to consider how you're feeling as well. If you're not feeling good about something, you've got to express that. It's not necessarily about, I need to be considerate of Abby's feelings. Well, if Abby's upset me, I have to also take into consideration that I'm upset as well. And I think people do not take that seriously. And what we need to also understand, I really do believe in a holistic lifestyle. I really do. And I know you do as well.
Definitely.
And I think when you don't speak, it can, and you hold on to things for so long. There are so many people now with so many different illnesses. And if you just open that throat chakra of yours,
yes,
I'm sure the illness at some point would dissipate. But a lot of people tend to, I think we misjudge the power of energy.
Yes, when you suppress, it manifests, and whatever you suppress will manifest into.
Yeah, so they say what you focus on, that's what will persist in your life.
Definitely.
Or what you resist, it persists.
Yeah.
So empathy, when you're communicating a problem, is such an important aspect. Empathy is the ability to understand and relate to the feelings of someone else. Once you've learned to recognize another person's feelings, you can go one step further and actually relate to those feelings.
Right.
So, for example, you know, when you said to your friend that your grandmother passed, I believe she felt she was being empathetic by trying to highlight a relative had passed in her life.
Yes, definitely. I understand that part, and I think her form of expression is that tough love. You know, you shouldn't.
I think death is not something you have tough love on.
Precisely. So understand. I think it's having an understanding on when to express certain things rather than, Yeah, I would actually, tough so
love. That's not. That's empathy.
But empathy at the wrong time, or the wrong type of empathy,
or a misdiagnosis of what empathy actually is.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing. If we don't actually understand that we're not actually being empathetic, we need to actually talk to each other. Because one of the things that I discussed last week was, I had a friend, and one day she sent me a message a couple of weeks ago and said, I miss you, haven't spoken to you. So I said to her, well, to be honest, you're always busy, so I've just left you to crack on. And, we share a deep bond. And she said to me, I finally met her yesterday, and she said to me, it's not because, the reason I responded to your message is not because I felt guilty, it's because I felt that you felt sad and you were hurt. And that's the thing. With communication, you need to operate in a place of trust. And trust that you know that this person's coming from a good place. And I knew when we had a conversation, she didn't, she's a very loving person, I'm a very loving person, but I had to be honest with her about the fact she was always too busy.
Right.
And so, again, communicating, and I think as you grow older, as we're all really, really young, and we established that last week, but as you grow older, we get busier. People have children, people can get jobs internationally, or all over the country.
People just have things going on.
Yeah. And so we have to also understand that if someone, because I always tell people, if I respond very quickly, or I send you one word or emoji with a thumbs up, I'm actually really busy, but I want you to know that I acknowledge your message. And that's the thing. Communication is important, but I don't want people to be attached to their phones 24 hours a day, because I think that's also quite dangerous. And if we can recognize in communication misunderstandings, I think that's even more important.
And also, being attached to your phone takes off a layer of communication, because with verbal communication, you have non-verbal
This is the millennial talking.
And when you are communicating, it's important to attach that physical touch, that smile, the eye contact. There's just a lot more to communication than just verbal.
Do you think that people misunderstand communication? I think emails are very dangerous.
Oh, definitely. WhatsApp messages, dangerous.
So anything written, I think, has a tendency to be misunderstood. But we're going to come back to that as we take a short break. So I had an incident today where somebody, again, I think I email the same way I speak.
Right. This will be interesting.
So someone gave me an instruction, and the mistake that individual made is that I don't know who they are.
Oh, right. Okay.
And so I explained the process and gave them feedback on people to communicate with, so that she can understand how we all work as a collective. And I think there was a little bit of frustration in that person's response. But what I made it clear, and I always make it clear to everyone in the email, I said to her that she has free will to do whatever she wants, but if her free will is to ignore what I'm saying, I will not participate in the activity she's asked. If that was you on the other end of that email, what would you think if you've never met me?
I mean, okay. I would probably not type it out, just a few swear words, but then
you know what, one thing I've gotten to an age of acceptance. You know, people are not going to like everything I say, but I don't mean it in a horrible way, but I'm over it.
But that person does not know who you are.
Yeah, but they should make the effort. You're approaching me, and I'm trying to explain to you, this is the way I work. And if you want a happy medium, my recommendations say, let's have a chat on the phone.
Yeah, so the focus would be getting to the goal, getting whatever you need to do, execute that. So find the most effective way to communicate back to you and not hold on to the sentiment of that email.
Well, they didn't respond.
Okay.
And again, see, I'm one of these people that I think if you are working with somebody,
right,
it's got to be a win-win. That's how I operate. Everything I do, I work with so many organizations, and I have to work with HR because I have to coach people. So my goal is to make sure the director of HR of whichever organization I work with, we're good. And that for me is a win-win. Because if you understand my perspective and my focus, you understand my focus for your coaches.
Yes.
Because I get into businesses wanting to see people succeed. And I've worked with you previously. Yeah. And one of the things for me is to see you grow and be a better person every single day. And one thing I do say to people, once the coaching session after a year is over, I'm not going to see you. And I don't mean it. See, the thing is, I think people think that type of communication is a bit harsh, but it's the reality that we all get busy. And you know, it depends on what point in your life I've met you. You know, if you're more mature, sometimes people that I coach become friends. And it's not, you know, by accident, I don't feel. But I do feel that people need to learn that different people have different methods of communication. Definitely. And also, if you're not happy with something, you've got to express yourself. Because then there's the passive aggressive, which you addressed, where you will have a conversation with someone and they have an attitude in their voice. And I'm not very good with all that.
So how would you, quick question, how would you, what are your feelings towards the cancel culture, which basically doesn't permit full communication? As soon as someone disagrees with how you communicate or what is being said, you're cancelled.
Okay, that's a millennial issue. As the millennial coach, I'll respond.
Yes, please.
Okay. So millennials, I hope you're listening loud and clear, because cancelling people does you a disservice. And I'll tell you why. If you cannot have an adult conversation after 18 or even after 21 years of age, and you cannot respect someone else's opinion, even if you disagree, that is a form of immaturity.
Definitely.
One of the most active ways of communication is something called active listening. So cancelling people, you have completely deleted a whole spectrum of theory and practice of communication. Active listening. So one of the things active listening allows you to do is focus on the person that is speaking. Avoid distraction by making eye contact with the speaker. If your mind begins to wander, force your attention back to the present moment. Make sure you understand. Sometimes, no matter how well you listen, you just can't quite understand what is said. In this situation, be sure to ask follow-up questions for clarification. Wait for your turn to speak. So this is something so many people struggle with. So, you know, when you're having those conversations and you're saying to, you know, you're saying, coach, you know, I want to, I don't know, change my career, and I'm trying to give you a response, but you're like, yeah, but and I'm like, yeah, so yeah, but You've even cancelled me before you've even allowed me to open my mouth. So what I tend to do when people do that is I ask them, did you ask for my help, or because you're not listening? Because I don't understand why I'm there if you're not listening. And I think listening is an active part. Well, I know listening is an active part of communication.
It's a vital part of communication.
But we struggle. And a lot of people, I had somebody send me an email a couple of weeks ago to tell me that I sent them they sent me a text message, said to me that the email I sent him was distressing.
In what sense? If you don't mind sharing.
In a business sense,
right.
Something we had agreed a few weeks or week before of the activities I'd asked him to fulfill.
Okay.
So when I revisited that, he told me that I'm distressing him. At this point, I've lost...
That's quite a heavy
Exactly.
word.
At this point, I'd lost all my patience with this individual because I'm very aware that everyone in the organisation, he was exiting the organisation anyway, and HR and me had already spoken, and they were just anticipating for him to exit because he had caused a lot of conflict. So I actually got on the phone and I made it clear to him. I said, and he did say to me, you've been the most supportive person since the beginning of the coaching sessions,
right.
And I've been able to speak to you and come to you, and you've always been there for me, and so on. So I said, look, I'm going to make something very clear to you. You've been very difficult to a lot of people in your business. Okay, we had a conversation last week. Again, I like to recap, and I have a very, very good memory. And so I tell people lying to me is not very good because I remember everything people say. And I made it clear to the individual as to how he makes things difficult for himself as of myself. And I made it clear to him that everything I've tried to do is to support you, and what you're doing now is causing more conflict when I'm just trying to tie up loose ends.
Right.
He actually apologized.
Okay.
And I wished him well. And that's the thing. I think it's really important to be honest. This is why integrity is, to me, the cornerstone of communication.
Be truthful, be honest.
So when it's my turn to speak, I let people ramble on. I don't, avoiding interrupting people, cutting people off when I've got something to say. If a thought pops into my head, people suggest, or theorists suggest, write it down for later.
Right.
I don't think anyone's got a pen and paper, and if you pick up your phone to remember to type something into your phone, people think you're messaging your friends, which is rude. So what I tend to do when I really have a thought, I put my hand up like I'm in class. I'm like, can I just interject, please, because I'm going to forget. And that's the thing, is being respectful, but interjecting in a way that somebody can understand that you need to say something that is going to support the conversation and not turn it into an argument.
And doing it respectfully.
Have you experienced where you're trying to get your point across and someone has completely dismissed what you're saying?
Well, yes, at some point in my life. And
anything recently?
Not really, actually. I think I've reduced communication with a lot of people. I go through this thing where I just need isolation for clarity. So
okay, and what do you think? I'm going to stick with this for 2 seconds. Isolation to get clarity on what?
On different aspects of my life, and also how it's important for me to evaluate how I interact with other people, how I interact with myself. Because communication with self is just as important, and it's just being mindful on the things that I say to myself. So I need time alone to analyze that. That's
actually quite profound. So thank you for sharing. And as a young millennial, I love saying the word millennial. I think it's so telling of where we are in our society. We think differently, and I think one thing about taking time for yourself, this is where mental health, I always say, is important, because we spend time cleaning our cars, our houses. Well, some people clean their houses. you know, but
hopefully we all do.
you know, well, let's hope if there's no cockroaches in other people's homes. But you know, we clean things, but we don't clean our minds. So spending time on your own I remember my term self-auditing is important, because you're able to look at, you know, your situation. Abby's actually writing notes. This is brilliant. This is what happens in coaching sessions. People actually I actually have a lot of people taking notes, so well done.
That's important. Thank you.
What are you taking notes on, by the way?
I like the term self-auditing.
Why do you like it?
Okay, so self-auditing for me, as someone who does website auditing, it makes so much sense. I can visualize it, and it just allows me to break things down in just segments and take it from there. So
one thing I try, and when it comes to communication, one thing I do when I do self-auditing is, if I communicated incorrectly or I might have upset someone, I actually will contact them to apologize. Because one of the things people don't realize is that word sorry, it could squash so much beef. At the moment, that's not happening with 50 Cent and Rick Ross, because 50 Cent has just ignited another argument with Rick Ross. Don't worry, it's a hip hop station, so anyone that loves hip hop understands what I'm saying. But also another thing that I saw this week, Little Kim, I love her. She's so tiny. She's as small as you, as I said earlier. She's like a thumbnail.
Amazing things come in smaller packages.
Anyway, as we were saying, guys, but I agree to a degree. Only if I had a boyfriend and he was 6 foot, then I'd be small, right? So then I could say the same thing, right?
Okay.
So in terms of, like, when I saw Little Kim, PETA, you know, the fur activists against animal fur,
right.
PETA, PETA, they were attacking or shouting at Little Kim and saying, how dare you wear fur.
Okay.
But I think, you know what, regardless of what you are an activist for, I sometimes think all the aggression, it just doesn't solve the issue. And I love Little Kim because she got gully and she went up to the person and she was going to knock her out. And so this is the problem with communication, is that when it's aggressively verbal, it turns aggressively physical. And that's what people need to understand. Yeah, it is a form of chaos. But also, when I look at people who are passionate, because obviously the PETA individual was passionate, but there's a way to express yourself. I'm passionate about developing people. I'm passionate about it, but I'm also passionate about manners and time. As you know, I like people being on time. You know that.
Yes,
you know, and I think when we started working together, you would stroll into my classrooms. Abby would stroll into my classrooms
get
like
breakfast
20 minutes late.
And get food
you know
on the
what?
way.
You know what I used to do? I said, ignore her and just carry on teaching. Because you know something? That's a form of communication that you don't respect me. And that's what people need to understand. When people say, oh, you know, I've got a coachee. Her dad has a girlfriend. She has been 4 hours late for things. Honestly, I have said to her, I don't even know what to say to her. Because I just don't even, how can you be 4 hours late for an event?
The thing is, you said it's a disrespect towards you. However, reflecting back to my frame of mind at that time, it wasn't necessarily about you.
No, I know.
It was disrespect towards myself.
I agree with that.
Yes.
But also, you're impacting not just me, those other people involved.
Definitely.
So that's why it's disrespectful to me, because if I plan a class and other people say it's a paid class and people have paid money, I would have security just tell you to wait outside. I'm serious. Because at the end of the day, it's like if I went to a concert. I went to Lauryn Hill at the Royal Opera House. I think that was over 10 years ago. That
was about 7 years ago.
No, that was much longer than that.
Okay.
This is before probably your birth. I'm still a millennial though.
Seriously.
She was 2 hours late. And I can say one thing about Lauryn Hill. She's a talented performer. But I'm sorry, Lauren, I will never spend money on going to see you live ever again. because that to me demonstrates you don't respect the people that actually wake up every morning, go to work and earn their money. Because she had a wardrobe malfunction, that's why she was 2 hours. And to me, that's just not even close to good enough when you are an international musician and people respect your art. So this is the thing, communication happens in so many different ways.
Yes.
And you just, to me, and I don't, the thing is, when I say it's disrespectful to me, I don't mean from a personal perspective. Like, I'm not taking it personal that you turned up late, because you learn very quickly you need to turn up on time, and then you were early all the time, which was nice because we could catch up. But that's still a form of communication, because to me, you're respecting your own hustle. When you turn up on time, you respect your own hustle. You need to learn. If you're going somewhere for knowledge, you need to get there to get the main importance, or even the agenda at the beginning.
Definitely, yeah.
So that's why, when it comes to communication, action is important, is how you behave. If you go to a meeting on time, and I'm on these people, I would rather not go somewhere rather than be late. But also, I also take into consideration who invitations come from.
Okay, give us an example.
So my cousin, a lot of people around, relatives, because unfortunately you can cut off family, because I do cut off people, but like this particular cousin, I really adore her, but I don't think she's always good with time. But for the first time, I turned up late to her son's christening, because I just thought I'll be here for like 20 hours. I turned up 2 hours late and they were still going, and I was just like, this is ridiculous.
Right.
Okay, for me, I want to be in and out. I don't need to be at christening for 10 hours. I really don't. And so what I learned to do is understand the person, how they enjoy time. I enjoy time very differently. So if I say, we've traveled, we've gone to Brighton, and I said to you to be ready at a certain time because of how long it takes to drive to Brighton from London, especially you're on the other side of the planet in London. And you did make it. You're a bit late, but you were conscious of your, and I was conscious of your efforts. So one thing about me is when I see someone trying, and this is a thing about communication, when you see someone trying to change, I keep saying, even about Boris, guys, give people room to change. We all make mistakes, all of us, even me. When I try and mix sometimes, as you can hear, if there's any blank noises, trust me, I'm having a little bit of a meltdown in the studio. But everything's quite far away, so I'm not as long or tall as I thought I was, so I can't stretch that far, so please just bear with me. But we all make mistakes. And so, as they say, when you know better, what do? You do better. Thank you. That's all we have time for today, guys. So thanks for listening to part 1 of Effective Communication with my special guest, Abi Banky of Africanist magazine. You can catch her also on Twitter or Instagram, and she's also just launched a new venture, so that should be quite exciting. We'll bring that forward in future podcasts. As I say goodbye to you now, please do not be disappointed, as I'll be back next week with part 2 of Effective Communication, where I conclude with some great tips on building communication strategies in your life to support your mindset and improving the effectiveness of your communication. But don't forget, you can reach me on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook at The Millennial Coach anytime. I'd love to hear from you. Please make sure you press the subscribe button so I arrive automatically on your phone or app of choice each week. And if you found any of the topics useful, or today's topic on communications useful, please share the podcast with a friend and start an interesting conversation today. You never know where it might lead you. I'll catch you next time. Have a great week. Much love. And thank you for listening to me, the Millennial Coach, on The Core.